In this video, I will show you multiple players at every position with a full lineup at the end for the main slate on FanDuel this weekend for Week 10. My name's Quick Pick Nick, and having compared every player's projection and price, here are your primary picks for Sunday, November 15th, 2020. If you like this kind of fast-paced, calculated content, subscribe and stay tuned for more lineups throughout the season, including an afternoon turbo slate on DraftKings tomorrow, as well as single-game slates for both Sunday night and Monday night football to follow. Starting off this lineup with our primary quarterback, we'll be sticking with the top player my model was able to find last week, the resurgent quarterback in the background of every MVP conversation, the godfather of the Bills Mafia, Josh Allen. In Week 9, I was able to find Allen for a relatively cheap cost, which was one of the reasons for success in our lineups given his huge 36-point performance. This massive margin for fantasy points was in large part due to Seattle's poor secondary, which is ranked last in the league for pass yards allowed. And while Arizona isn't as bad, they shouldn't be entirely different either, as the Cardinals rank in the bottom 10 for pass yards allowed per game. With Allen's accuracy back on track, completing over 80% of his passes, and another easy matchup, we should be able to expect another MVP caliber performance on Sunday. For the secondary, after reviewing my numbers, there were really only two clear-cut options at quarterback, with the former being Allen and the latter Kyler Murray. Simply put, Allen and Murray are far more relatively worth their cost compared to the rest of the options by a large margin. I've already shown you why Allen is primed for another career day, but as for the quarterback on the other side of the ball of Murray, he's also on a bit of a hot streak himself, scoring 38 fantasy points in both of his past two contests. The reason Allen is our primary with Murray as our secondary is due to Murray's tougher Buffalo defense, but still, you'll probably be fine if you find either of these two options at quarterback. Moving on to running back, our primaries here include Mike Davis and JD McKissic. For a bit of a throwback here for my early viewers, the lock of the week this week is Mike Davis, as it seems like FanDuel pulled the trigger on dropping Davis's price a bit too soon. With McCaffrey back in the fray last week and carrying the ball 18 times, it had seemed as if Davis was going to resume his minimal backseat role in Carolina. However, with McCaffrey's status once again in jeopardy, Davis immediately becomes a running back one option, as without McCaffrey, Davis never fell below 10 fantasy points in a game. For only $5,400, this high floor should be more than enough to justify his selection if McCaffrey is in fact ruled out Sunday. As for McKissic, he made the cut because of his wide range of utility on the Washington football team. McKissic is the Swiss Army knife for Washington, playing the short-range pass-catching option, recording an astronomical 14 targets last week alone. For someone so cheap on FanDuel, the sheer volume he is seeing is more than enough reason to lock him in for the weekend. Some secondaries at running back include Duke Johnson, but only if David Johnson is ruled out, seeing that Duke led the backfield in Houston last week without David in the game. Matt Breida if active, as he may assume the running back one role in Miami as a leader, since Kalen Ballage and Jordan Howard weren't able to get the job done last week without Myles Gaskin. And Jerick McKinnon, the player who was able to place our lineup in the top 1% last week, who seems to be coming into his own at San Francisco with a majority share of their rush attempts. Skipping to the primary tight end now, which will make sense later once we get to the receivers, my model found Logan Thomas, who has been a very consistent option for Washington, having been targeted at least 4 times in every game so far, and finding the end zone in 3 of them, which is rather promising for someone belonging to the under 5,000 club on FanDuel. A couple of secondaries here include Evan Engram, who has seen a huge bump in volume over the past few weeks, with 9 or more targets over the past 3, and Austin Hooper, a cheaper option who also finds solid volume in Cleveland. The reason we skipped the tight end is to show how much money we've been able to save throughout this lineup, allowing us to acquire Devontae Adams in addition to our other primaries of Stephon Diggs and Deontay Johnson. Adams should need no justification into our lineup, as his average fantasy points per game is 5 higher than any other option, and he ranks first in literally every important fantasy category: first in receiving yards per game, first in receiving touchdowns per game, first in receptions per game, and first in targets per game league-wide. Diggs made the cut due to a similar reason as Josh Allen, facing a weak Arizona secondary as Allen's favorite target, with no less than 6 targets in a game all season long. Johnson also looks promising, as he made a grand return from injury last week with 10 targets, over 70 yards, and 11 fantasy points. He will likely be able to continue this trend as he hopefully remains healthy against a failing Cincinnati team. The secondaries include Jerry Judy, given his huge uptick in usage with Drew Lock's return to the Broncos, Robbie Anderson, a consistent option but one without much explosive potential, and Jeremy Grant, a nearly minimum cost option who's starting to work his way up the depth chart in Miami. The tertiary flex player is Tyler Lockett, as he is the definition of a boom or bust player, but is facing a Rams defense who will be able to lock down DK Metcalf, so we might see another firework night for Lockett. For the defense, the primary is the Steelers, because they're averaging about 10 fantasy points per game, which is almost unheard of for a defense at this point in the season, and will have a walk in the park with the Bengals. But if you're looking for some cheaper alternatives, some secondaries include the Saints, with a favorable matchup against the banged up 49ers team, and the Buccaneers, who have been solid throughout 2020 and face a not too bad but not too good Panthers team. That's what my model was able to come up with for the main slate on FanDuel this Sunday, November 15th. This has been Quick Pick Nick, the intersection for sports, data analysis, and speed. Thanks for watching.